but it goes beyond Seattle. A recent study by a group of economists in Seattle at the University of Washington reignited a very old and, to my mind, rather boring debate. It asked the question, when you raise the minimum wage of workers, that is, you raise the wage of people at the bottom of the economy. Let's remember the federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.25 per hour. Lower than that in any European country, and lower by a lot. Okay, let's look. The University of Washington economists said their research showed that when you raise the minimum wage, there will be a loss of jobs. That is, unemployment will go up. Not a great deal, but that was enough. Liberal economists, horrified by this result, reignited the message they want everyone to believe, and so they rediscovered some recent research by a group of economics professors at the University of California in Berkeley, which shows the opposite, namely that when you raise the minimum wage, there is little or no impact on jobs. So back and forth we go. Liberals saying you should raise the minimum wage because it doesn't lose some people their jobs, and conservatives saying you shouldn't raise the minimum wage, or at least if you do, you should be aware you're hurting people at a low wage. And what's the reason for this? Very simple, very basic economics. If you raise the wage, you make work more expensive for the employer. And in a free economy like ours, free capitalism, the employer is free to take the job away from the worker if he's unwilling to pay them the higher minimum wage. So here we have it. One side in this old debate saying, don't worry, you can raise the minimum wage because the employers won't lay off low-income workers. And the conservatives, suddenly demonstrating a concern for poor workers that they never show otherwise, are saying, no, you mustn't raise the minimum wage because there will be poor workers who lose their jobs. Besides the disingenuousness of people basically on both sides, let me remind you again of a little history. About 100 years ago, there was a similar debate. It had to do with child labor. Should it be allowed for capitalists to hire little kids as young as 5 years of age, pay them very little, and take advantage of them because they can pay them so little to get a lot of work done? The conservatives said, yes, that's a great thing. You should allow that because poor families can barely get by and they need to be able to send their children out. Here again, conservatives showing a sudden concern for the poor. The liberals came back and said, no, that's terrible. Child labor shouldn't be allowed, and we don't want it. And then they felt awkward because the conservatives said, you're hurting poor families because they need to be able to send their kids out to work. Guess what? The anti-child labor folks won. You can't employ people 5 years old anymore in the United States the way you once could and the way thousands of capitalists did. Did capitalism fall apart, as the conservatives said, if you do that? Did poor families rise up in revolt and demand the return of child labor? Of course not. Child labor was outlawed. Just as paying human beings $7.25 an hour can and should be outlawed now. Economists shouldn't be debating as if the employer has the right to say, I either pay you a low wage or I won't pay you any wage at all. We should raise the minimum wage because that's what an economy owes its people. And we should give every adult, healthy person a job because that's also what a decent economy owes people. And if capitalism in America can't do it, that's an argument to change systems. But as long as we don't face that, and we have our intelligent economists debating, gee, do we dare raise the minimum wage? Or, gee, maybe we shouldn't so that poor people don't lose their jobs. You know what this is like? This is like being accosted in a dark alley by a person who says, I'm going to give you freedom of choice. You can either have me stab you and take your money or hit you over the head with a hammer and take your money. A rational person says, I don't like the choice. He doesn't stand there and say, gee, which one is the better way for me to go? We are being held hostage by capitalism when we are told either accept a miserable low wage or the employer will be free to lay you off and you'll have no wage at all. A system that offers that choice, that has intelligent economists debating back and forth rather than saying, how do we develop an economy that gives people a decent wage and a job, which is what they should be doing, that's a comment on a system that has spun out of control, that is not serving the mass of people. Not well at all.